Okay, class is in session, pay attention. Imagine a world with no cities, no roads, no electricity, no language, just silence, wilderness, fear, and the raw fight to survive. This is the story of humanity's beginning. A time when we weren't yet human, but desperately trying to become. Nearly 4.7 million years ago, the Earth was a brutal place. Scorching heat, violent rains, and jungles filled with predators. The air carried tension, every sound could mean death. And those walking the earth weren't modern humans. They were known as Australopithecus, a creature somewhere between ape and man. They didn't speak, no language, no writing, no tools, no fire. But they had one thing, the most powerful thing, the will to live. They woke up each morning, not with a schedule or a plan, but with a single question: will I survive today? Mothers couldn't protect their babies forever. Men couldn't guarantee food or shelter. Each day was a battle, each night a test of courage. Nature gave them one law: adapt or vanish. They learned from the earth how to climb trees, gather fruits, drink from rivers, and stay alert. They had no tools, but they had instincts. They had no books, but they had raw awareness. They were like you and me, thrown into a world with nothing, stripped of everything, forced to start from scratch. What would you do? How would you survive? Now pause for a second. What if you were born in that time? No clothes, no home, no fire, just you, your body, your breath, your will to survive. Rain wasn't romantic, it was terrifying. Lightning wasn't thrilling, it was deadly, and the nights. Pitch dark, so silent you could hear the breath of the beast stalking you. But they didn't quit, they ran, they hid, they fought. And every time they survived, they grew stronger. This struggle, it became our legacy. The first lesson early humans learned was this: you can't survive alone. You need others, so they formed groups, small, scattered tribes. And that was the first step towards society, but survival still wasn't guaranteed. There were droughts, famines, floods, and then there were the other humans. See, we weren't the only ones trying to survive. There were other species of humans, the Neanderthals, the Homo erectus, and they weren't friendly. Early humans had to defend their turf, defend their women, defend their young. So they did what they had to do. They fought, they hunted. Sometimes they didn't come back from these hunts, but when they did, they brought more than just food. They brought stories, experiences, knowledge. They started to share, they started to plan. The group became stronger, more united. Then came the most important discovery, the one that truly made us human: fire. No more hiding from the darkness. Now they could see, now they could cook, now they could keep warm. With fire came light, with light came hope. For the first time, they could read the stars, tell the time, scare away the beasts. Around them, fire became a symbol of their triumph over darkness, a promise of warmth and safety, a reminder that they were more than just survivors. They were becoming human. This era lasted for thousands of years. Each day was an adventure, each night a victory. And as the generations passed, they started to notice a pattern in the earth, the seasons, the weather, the plants, the animals. They started to predict what would happen next, where the next meal would come from, how to prepare for the changing times. They began to understand the rhythm of the earth, and in that understanding, they found their place in it. They learned to plant seeds and watch them grow, to domesticate animals and use them for more than just food. They had tamed the wild, not by force, but by knowledge. And then something incredible happened. They started to look up at the sky and wonder, are there other worlds like ours? Are there other beings wondering about their place in the universe? They looked at the stars and saw not just points of light, but potential homes, potential life. In that moment, they crossed a boundary. They went from being just survivors to being explorers of the unknown. Their journey had taken them millions of years, but they had finally arrived. They were human, not because they had conquered nature, but because they had lived with it, learned from it, and evolved with it. This is a story about humans. Well, to be more precise, it's about the making of humans. It's about the dawn of our species. It's about the awakening of consciousness. It's about how we went from being just another animal to becoming human. The story begins with survival. Survival was just the beginning. Now came evolution, slow, brutal, magnificent. The rise of tools, the discovery of fire, and the awakening of something deeper, thought. In the early chapters of human history, every advancement felt like a miracle. At first, they picked up sticks and stones, not to play, but to defend. A sharp rock wasn't just a rock, it became a weapon, a tool, a lifeline. And then one day, perhaps by accident, one of them struck two stones together, and a spark flew. That spark, tiny, bright, full of hope, was the beginning of fire. And fire changed everything. It gave light to the night. It gave warmth to the freezing bones. It turned raw meat into cooked meals and fear into power. Fire was not just survival, it was the birth of control. For the first time, man was no longer completely at the mercy of nature. For the first time, we fought back, but the story doesn't end there. They took that spark of fire and the stone they used to start it, and they shaped it, not just to hunt or to gather, but to create. With patience, with purpose, they chipped away at stones, turned them into axes, scrapers, spears, not beautiful, but brilliant, crude, but powerful, and in the cracks of this survival, something else began to bloom: awareness. Imagine a young boy, maybe 10, 12 years old, sitting beside an elder. The boy watches as the elder sorts through berries, discarding some, keeping others. He asks why. The elder explains which ones are safe, which will make him sick. The boy doesn't understand all the words, but he understands the lesson. Next time he sees those berries, he will know. This wasn't written anywhere, but the boy will remember. They began to remember, they began to learn. They noticed which fruits were safe, which paths were deadly. They passed that knowledge down, not in books, but in behavior, through watching, mimicking, doing. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were becoming aware. The human mind, slow, uncertain, but powerful, had begun to stir. And then came the questions. Where does the sun go at night? Why does death come? Why does the fire dance like it's alive? They had no answers, but they kept asking, because in asking, they were learning. And in learning, they were becoming human. Now, imagine this, a cold, silent night. A group of them huddled near the fire. The flames flicker. A child stares into them, his eyes wide, not with fear, but with wonder. That wonder, that spark in the eye, that was the beginning of imagination. And imagination, that is the seed of everything to come: art, language, belief, dreams, civilizations. All of this starts with a single spark: the courage to ask questions, the curiosity to seek answers, the determination to keep searching, even when there's nothing left to find, because the journey becomes the destination. They were becoming human. This is a story about humans. Or maybe it's a story about you. Maybe it is you. Maybe it's about your journey from a helpless infant to a curious toddler, from a confused child to a questioning teenager, from a dreamy romantic to a thoughtful adult, from a fearful witness to an engaged participant, from someone who takes things for granted to someone who ponders existence. We have come a long way, but perhaps the journey is not over. Perhaps there are still more sparks to ignite, more questions to ask, more wonders to see. This story, it's not just about the past. It's about the present. It's about you. I'm glad you're on this journey with us. Thank you for being a part of this story. If you liked this video, give us a like. And if you really liked it, share it so that other people can also enjoy this story. And don't forget to subscribe, because here, amazing stories like this one unfold every week. Until next time, keep wondering, keep asking questions, keep being human. It's impossible to overstate how big this is. This discovery has shocked the scientific community like nothing before. You might have heard some rumors. Some people are calling it the most important archaeological discovery ever. Here at the site, an international team of scientists and historians have found evidence of the earliest known human settlement. It dates back more than 10,000 years. But there's something even older here, something so strange, so unexpected, it's rewriting history. For decades, experts believed the earliest human settlements were in Africa. That's where our species originated, and where we lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Then about 12,000 years ago, we started spreading out across the world. But that's just what they used to believe, because here in this cave, they found something that changes everything. In the deepest, darkest chamber, hidden from the eyes of men for tens of thousands of years, archaeologists have found markings on the walls. strange shapes and symbols which appear to be the oldest known examples of abstract art. They date back at least 45,000 years, possibly much further. And what's really shocking is that they weren't made by Homo sapiens, they were made by Neanderthals. Until recently, we thought Neanderthals were basically a lesser version of humans, that they lived in caves, that they hunted, and that they died out 40,000 years ago. But this discovery suggests that they may have been more like us than we thought. The implications are staggering. If Neanderthals were capable of this kind of abstract thinking, then how much else don't we know about them? How much of human history has been lost forever? Meanwhile, another team is uncovering secrets in the nearby forest. They're excavating an ancient campsite, carefully brushing dirt off broken tools, bits of charcoal, and animal bones. Everything is carefully catalogued, every fragment placed in its own box. Because each artifact tells us something about the people who lived here, their daily lives, their hopes and dreams, their fears and failures. Scattered among the relics are scraps of cloth, remnants of clothing, the oldest ever found in this region. What were these people wearing? What did they look like? And where did they go afterwards? Did they travel to far-off lands? Did they establish new settlements, or did they die out, leaving behind nothing but a few scraps of fabric and a mystery that will never be solved? As the sun sets, the team returns to the village. They gather together under the stars, sharing stories and laughter around a campfire. In the flickering light, their faces are illuminated, their eyes shining with excitement and wonder. For these explorers are not just uncovering artifacts. They're piecing together the very fabric of human history. These discoveries have changed our understanding of human history forever. We're learning that our ancestors were more intelligent, more creative, and more complex than we ever imagined. And as we continue to explore, who knows what other secrets we'll uncover? The story of humanity is one of constant change and evolution. Thousands of years passed, from scattered forests to endless plains, these early humans kept moving. Always searching for food, for shelter, for meaning. But something had changed. They were no longer just wandering bodies. They had memory, they had community, they had the beginnings of what we now call culture. They began to mark trees with symbols, carving rocks with patterns. Their hands, once only for hunting, now began to create. Somewhere, deep in a cave, a handprint appeared on a wall, red, painted in clay. It was not a message to others, it was a message to time. I was here. They buried their dead, not because they had to, but because they felt. They felt love, loss, grief, hope. These emotions, these invisible forces. They separated humans from every other creature on Earth. They began to stay in one place. To plant, to harvest, to tame animals, to build shelters, not just for protection, but for belonging. Villages, tribes, families, the age of civilization had begun. From fire came community, from community came language. From language came stories, and from stories, everything. They told tales of the stars, of gods and monsters, of heroes who conquered beasts and wise ones who listened to the wind. They passed down not just tools, but ideas, and those ideas became identity. Each generation took the past, molded it, added to it, and passed it forward, until one day the same creature that once ran barefoot through forests, carved temples, wrote poetry, built kingdoms, launched rockets, cured diseases, asked the question, who am I? This is the story of us from silence to song, from stone to satellite, from fear to faith, from I must survive to why do I exist. All of it, every city you've seen, every book you've read, every invention you've used, is the echo of that first spark, that first fire, that first step a creature took toward becoming human. And now the story continues with you.